It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large with Warner Lewis. 60 minutes of smart talk radio with interesting guests from all walks of life begins right now. So sit back and enjoy. And now, from the flight deck, here's your host, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And of course, that means some smart talk radio is in your future. And this segment, we're going to be talking money. As a matter of fact, this entire hour, we're going to be talking money. We've got two very interesting guests. Our first one, Wes Moss. He's a partner at Capital Investment Advisors. He also hosts the radio show Money Matters. He's appeared on CNN, CNBC, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and other publications. He's got a new book out called You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. I know that has perked your interest, if nothing else. Wes, how are you, my friend?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Good morning. I guess Kansas, you guys are kind of right next to Kansas City and Topeka.
Yes, we're right in between them.
Well, good morning.
Yes, indeed. Hey, let's do a little bit better setup about you. Share with our Lewis at Large listeners, if you would. Again, you're a partner with the Capital Investment Advisors, but give us some background information about you, a little bio information, and how this whole subject of money and retiring, why is that so important? We think it's obvious, but go ahead and tell us.
Sure. Well, I've been doing this now for about 16 years, and what has really piqued my interest, probably the most fun part about investing and financial planning, is when you can help somebody actually pull the trigger on retirement, and really the sooner the better for most people. And I think in America, especially going through the great financial crisis, just to be able for a lot of Americans to wrap their arms around the concept that they have enough money to, and it's not necessarily our grandparents' sense of retirement, but kind of, hey, I'm in the position to be able to retire, stop working, do what I want to do. That's a really hard concept for people to get their arms around because it seems really difficult. And the fact that I'm able to help people really get to that point before the age of 70 and 65, and even in people in their 50s to get to that point, that's a very, very cool part about what you can do as a financial advisor. If things are going well, and if people are working with you to achieve these goals, and it really can happen. So that's really that's the coolest part about my job, and that's kind of the meat of it. And then I've been able to grow our practice for a long time now. We're a firm about $1.3 billion is what we manage. I've been doing radio now here in Atlanta for about 7 years, and really fortunate to be able to be in a position to help a lot of people, be well beyond just our client base, but listeners here all over Georgia. So it's an exciting position to be in for me.
Wes, we got a lot of baby boomers that listen to this show, and we know the subject of baby boomers and retirement is not new. It is very much in the headlines these days. But let's do this. Let's talk about those that are really entering retirement, and we'll say those that are, let's say if they're 65, they were born, let's say in the late 40s, at the early front edge of the baby boom, let's say 40, somewhere 45 to 52, somewhere in there. Again, it's tough, but what have they done well, and what have they not done well, in your opinion?
Well, the book that I've written that'll be coming out, and it's still not out until mid-May, it took me a while. Originally, I was going to title the book "Happiest Retiree on the Block," and my publisher yanked that title because I think there's a baby book that is similarly titled. So after we really got into the book, or my publisher read it a couple times, they said, really, this book is about retiring early, Wes. That's the real theme here. So money and happiness, and I did this huge national survey about what makes people categorize, let's say 1,350 people, 46 different states. And I asked this group all sorts of financial questions, and I categorized them between a 1 to 5 scale of happiness. They rated themselves in a couple different ways. So I effectively took the happiest, the top 2 happy groups and the bottom 2 happy groups, and compare all of their financial habits and their lifestyle. And so that really gives me an indication in the book, and this is the very cool part about the book and the exciting part about this research, is that I'm able to share, and I'll do that here today, I'll give you a preview of this, or your listeners, what the happy group does right. And the happy group is a group that gets to retire early in real life versus the unhappy group. So I think your original question was, hey, what are these people getting right? And the people that are able to be in that fortunate position to be able to call it quits when they want to, doesn't mean they necessarily stop working, but there's a couple things in common. One of the first ones is, and this is kind of the touchy-feely part of this, is they have a whole lot of things that they want. It's almost as though they have this burning purpose of why they have the money saved. It's kind of like, well, I've got $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $500,000. That's great, but unless you have 3 or 4 what I call core pursuits in the book, one of them might be golf, one of them might be Scottish dancing, for all I know. And the survey came in with tons and tons of different really interesting pastimes. But you've got to have this burning drive to be able to do a whole other life after you stop working. And that's actually a really important thing that I learned, and I have learned from people in my survey, clients, listeners that are kind of living out what I think is a really fun, exciting retirement. So that's kind of the quick number one. Number two, I'll skip to a financial idea here, is that this is a group that either has their mortgage paid off or they're getting pretty darn close to paying it off. And one interesting thought in the book, and part of this research, I even graphed this out, it shows how happiness increases, and there are higher and higher levels of happiness, the lower the amount of years you have left to pay off your mortgage. And it's pretty fascinating research to see a direct correlation where the more years you have, the longer it seems as though you can start spending money on the stuff you really want to be spending it on versus, hey, I've still got to be paying this mortgage check to Wells Fargo every month, as opposed to, hey, this is money we can go on a trip with, or this is money that I can go to the Masters with, or this is money that we can go on an RV trip to Yellowstone with. So it's really about what's the utility I get out of my money? Is it going down the drain to pay off a mortgage, or is my mortgage paid off? It's going to the discretionary things that I really want to be doing. And that's something that is relatively controversial. There have been whole books that have been written about why you should never pay off your mortgage. Low interest rates, put your money in the stock market, no need to pay off a mortgage because you can be earning more than 4 or 5% that you're paying on your mortgage if you're in the market. And I've learned, and you can make a financial case to do that, but my happy retiree group, they either don't have a mortgage or their mortgage payoff is well within their reach, or there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's kind of something that is really important to this group to do, and that's one of the many things in the book that I talk about that they're really getting right versus the unhappy group.
The whole subject of mortgage, let's explore that. And again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis here from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. In this segment, we're talking to Wes Moss. He's a partner in Capital Investment Advisors. Down in Atlanta, hosts the radio show Money Matters. He's appeared on all things financial as far as the media is concerned. Wes, in this whole thing of happiness means no mortgage. People listening are thinking, gee, does he mean I go all in and pay off my mortgage no matter what? Or do you got any guidelines there, like when you should and when you shouldn't, so to speak?
Absolutely, yeah. And I have one of the chapters of the book is about how to manage the mortgage question because, of course, there's so many different ways to go about it. And by the way, I love that you are live from the flight deck on your show. I think that's very cool. I think I might steal that from you here in Atlanta.
You're welcome to.
That's cool.
Okay.
Here's my thought on that, and I have a rule. I call it the 1/3 rule, and it really what really matters here is the balance between someone's retirement money, meaning IRA, 401k, 403b, 457, anything that's what we call qualified money in the financial world. Really, it just means IRA money or 401k money for most people versus after-tax money. And those are two really important buckets of money because, one, if you have after-tax money, you can pull it out of the bank, pay off a mortgage, and you're not taxed on the money you're pulling out. But if you pull money out of an IRA or a 401k, especially in big chunks to pay off a mortgage, you have a huge amount of tax that comes along with that because pulling money out of an IRA is just like it's considered ordinary income that you have to pay federal taxes on. And when you're pulling out of, let's say you owe $100,000 on the mortgage, you say to yourself, well, I've got $300,000 in my 401k and I'm 60 and I can take it out without penalty. Should I just pull it out and pay off the mortgage? The answer is no, because then you're gonna up your tax bracket by $100,000+, pay tax on the whole thing, and increase your overall federal tax bracket. So my rule is, if you can pay off your mortgage by using a third or less, a 1/3 or less of your after-tax money, I don't care if you're 40, 50, 60, do it. So it's my rule of 1/3, and again, you really have to have after-tax money to do it. So that's my rule of thumb. I go through that in the book. But then there are lots of other ways to do this. And again, that's not necessarily easy for a lot of people. You owe $200,000 on a mortgage. You're going to have, in my guidelines, you've got to have $600,000 in after-tax money to pay it off in one check. So not a lot of people are in the position to do that. What my Happy Retiree group taught me is just the power of accelerating your monthly payments. And I go through a couple examples in the book. But if you can put $100, $200, $300 towards your mortgage every month extra, you can very easily shave a decade or 2 decades off of your mortgage payments. And that's really, really important. And that's the kind of financial move that isn't necessarily that painful for people to do. In fact, you up your mortgage payment by $200 or $300 or $400. At some point, you may get used to it, not notice it. The next thing you know, your mortgage is cut in half. The time on your mortgage can be cut in half. Right. That's really important.
We're in a little bit of, as they would say, a rising rate environment, but I think most people would agree. Even now, as we're talking on this show, most rates are sort of 4 to 5, 5 being high, 4 being anything under 4, probably now a little bit low. But even that, I would think, do you agree that this is still a decent time to refi if you do not have something like that yet?
You couldn't be more on the money with that. And we've been given, and consumers, homeowners have been given multiple chances here. And, we see Janet Yellen, our new Fed chair, out every week talking somewhere, whether it's the Economics Club in New York or some press conference. It's very clear to me that the Federal Reserve is still handling the economy with kid gloves, and they've got this big safety net like they were at the circus, and the Fed has this big safety net under the economy still. So they're going to keep rates low as long as they need to. But the minute this economy hits what I would consider escape velocity, where they still don't have to goose it with a cheap money in order for us to grow and have a better job environment, that's when rates are really going to go up. So today you can still do a mortgage for 4%, 4.25%, 4.5%. And if there's still plenty of people out there that have higher mortgage rates that haven't refied. So yeah, this is yet another chance to go ahead and lock in a low rate, whether it's a 15-year mortgage or a 30. And it's a wonderful time to do it.
Yeah. Again, we're with Wes Moss. I got a brand new book out, or soon will be, in the very, very near future. Here, we'll find out how we can get a copy of it. It's going to be called "You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think." All right, Wes. Let's look at this group now. And again, we understand we're not giving out direct financial advice, but these are just sort of some overviews in broad generalities. That group that is sort of 50 to 55, they're not quite on the edge of retirement, but they can certainly see the light maybe out there, and they maybe have a 10 to 15-year work horizon. What kind of things should they be positioning themselves? And if they're not doing something, what should they start doing right away?
Well, we're all in the position where we're trying to save money, and the reason we're doing that is so that we can replace our income when we stop working, very simply, right? So we're working for 30 and 40 years. We get a big W-2 paycheck, or maybe we have our own business, so we're getting 1099 income or distribution income. And it's while we're working, we're used to kind of one big paycheck or maybe two big paychecks in the family. And when you're in pre-retirement, you've got to start understanding that at some point when you get to the retirement age, especially if you retire a little bit early, which is my hope that this book helps people do, is that you've got to understand how to go from one or two big paychecks to a bunch of little paychecks. So instead of one big river of income, I think of it as three or four or five different tributaries of income. And that's going to be Social Security. That's going to be potentially rental income if you buy a rental property or two. It's potentially part-time work. So it's something that you like to do. You're not making nearly as much as you used to do, but it can really help, especially if you want to retire early. And then really in my opinion, the most critical part of it, as you're in your 50s preparing to retire, is the thought of generating a steady stream of income from the investments that you do have. So whether it's $200,000 or $400,000 or $1 million, whatever the number is, I don't look at that necessarily as just a lump sum that you draw down on. I look at that as a body of money that is there to now generate another or an additional income stream through dividends and interests and distributions. And that, to me, that's kind of the financial side of this that adds that extra really powerful income stream. And that's the point. That's why we're saving today, is to generate that extra income stream on top of Social Security, on top of rental income, on top of part-time work, on top of a pension. Now, my older clients in their 60s, 70s, a lot of them do have pensions. I'd say 40, 50% of them have pensions, and that's great. If your listeners are in their 30s or 40s, they're probably not going to have a pension. So that dynamic has certainly shifted, and that's something that needs to be prepared for. And I talk a lot about that in the book.
What about, let's talk about Social Security just in general. I would assume you are a proponent of waiting until as late as you possibly can in your life to start drawing on that, but I'll let you answer that. What do you think about that?
Sure. Actually, to the contrary, my opinion on that is not to wait. And there are a couple of reasons why. And again, there are certainly different nuances, and every financial situation is different. But my rule of thumb is pretty simple. If you're 62, between the ages of 62, when you can start getting social, and 66 or 67, depending on what your full retirement age is, depending on your birthday, but let's call it 62 to 66. It's a 4-year window. If you are working during that period of time, making any sort of significant income, then the answer is you do not want to take Social Security early at 62. However, if you're in the position to kind of pull the trigger on retirement early, before 60 or 62 or 63, and you're stopping working your main income-oriented job, that I do say go ahead and take it. And the reason is it's just a really long break even. And yes, the longer you wait, you get a raise. You get a 5% raise, 6% raise, 7% raise each year you wait. But the way the math works out here is that you get a $70, $80 a month increase for every year, but you also leave on the table thousands of dollars that you don't have access to.
Right.
So let's say a low end example would be $1,000 a month. The average Social Security last year in 2012 was $1,200 per person in America. So that's the average Social Security check. Let's say it's $1,000. You don't take social for a whole year. You've just left $12,000 on the table. How long does it take you to make that $12,000 back? It takes about 13 years. So that takes you into your mid-70s. And from what I see in real life, we have a lot more fun and do a lot more things with our money in our 60s and early 70s than we do 75 to 85. So I'd rather see people have the money today, have the utility of the money, than wait 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years betting on the fact that they're going to live to 95. And yes, the numbers work out in your favor to take it later if you live to your 90 or 95 or 100.
Right.
But we're doing all the fun things we want to do at our younger retirement years. So as opposed to, I know a lot of people will tell you, wait. I'm usually in the camp to say take it sooner than most people might think.
All right, as we start to kind of wind down here a little bit, let's go again to the next sort of younger group. That group that, let's just say in general, 40 to 50 years old, that may be looking at working as long as 25 more years. Tell us about where they ought to be, what they ought to be thinking about.
So I have 2 really important rules of thumb that are quick and really powerful to remember. One I call TSL, Taxes, Savings, Life, and the other is what I call the $1,000 a month rule. Let me start with TSL real quick. TSL stands for Taxes, Savings, Life. If you are in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, really, a great rule of thumb to live by, and this is why I've never been a proponent of the latte factor. You know, if you buy too many lattes, you're spending $3 on coffee and you'll never get to retirement. I look at it another way. I think that if you do the big things right, TSL is one of them, then I don't care what you spend your money on. And here are the big things, here are the ratios. You basically take your gross income, not your after-tax, but your gross income. 30% goes to taxes on average, federal and state. 20% should go to savings, so that's T, that's S, and then L, life. It leaves you with 50%. So and this, again, for some families, especially when you're younger and your income is still pretty low, this is a harder thing to do. But if you can live on 50%, that's life, and saving 20, knowing that 30 is going to go to taxes, you'll be in a very comfortable position by your mid-50s when it comes to being able to retire. So taxes, savings, life, really important thing to remember. And I don't care what you spend your money on. If it's all 50% is discretionary, I don't care if you buy lattes or you buy nice cars or you have horses. It's not my position, or my thought is that for anyone's position to judge how people are spending their money, as long as they're doing it in that 50% fashion. And then the last quick thing I would tell your listeners, I think is really important. I call this the $1,000 a month rule, and this is something that we all should remember as we're saving. What are we saving for? We're saving for generating income in the future. Well, the $1,000 a month rule says that for every $240,000 you save, that will then in retirement be $1,000 a month. Math's pretty simple on that. It's 240,000 times 5%, $12,000 a year divided by 12 months, $1,000 a month. So I think we can think of retirement planning in that context. If I want $2,000 a month for the rest of my life, starting in retirement and beyond, then I need to save $480,000. If I need $3,000 a month, I need $720,000. So as I think of the money we're saving in terms of what will it generate in the future, and a great way to remember this and for your listeners is really for every $240,000, that's another $1,000 a month for the rest of my life once I retire.
Well, it is a broad subject, and we can't cover it all. We've just sort of scratched the surface here, but we've been talking to Wes Moss. He's a partner at Capital Investment Advisors. He also hosts a radio show down in Atlanta called Money Matters. He's been on CNN, CNBC, et cetera, et cetera. He's got a book coming out very soon called You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. Wes, how can people find out more about your sage advice and also maybe order a copy of the book?
Well, first of all, Warner, I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been fun. For people to find the book, it's probably the easiest thing to do. Amazon, of course. It'll be Kindle or good old-fashioned softback copy. So Amazon is an easy place to do it. And then, of course, my website is an easy place to do it, which is just wesmoss.com, WESMOSS.com.
Hey, well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your advice, and Have a great rest of 2014, and we'll see you in retirement.
I appreciate it.
Sooner than you think.
Thank you so much.
You bet. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.